Level 1. The House Party Plug. It starts because you're the one person at every party who somehow always has a little extra. A habit that began as generosity and quietly turned into a business without anyone, including you, deciding it should. Your cousin Dev gets you a half ounce at a price that only makes sense if you're moving weight, and moving weight only makes sense if you're selling to more than just yourself and your two roommates. You do the math on a napkin at 1 a.m. and the math works out better than your actual job does. The first few sales happen exactly the way you told yourself they would. Low-key, low stakes. Friends of friends texting a first name you don't use anywhere else. Nobody thinks of you as a dealer yet, including you. You think of yourself as a guy who's generous and good at math. By month 3, you've got a spreadsheet, an actual spreadsheet tracking who owes what, color-coded, hidden inside a fake homework folder on a laptop nobody else uses. It feels responsible. It feels like the exact opposite of what it actually is, which is the first paper trail of your entire criminal career, sitting in plain sight because at this level you don't yet understand that organization is its own kind of evidence. Level 2. The Real Supplier. Dev can't keep up with what you're moving, so he introduces you to a man named Ostrovsky, who runs product through a tire shop on the industrial side of town. The kind of business that does just enough real work to explain the cash, and just little enough to make you wonder how anyone's ever checked. Ostrovsky doesn't do small talk. He watches you for 2 full minutes before he says anything, then tells you the price, the minimum, and the one rule that matters. Nothing that traces back to the shop. Ever. You don't fully understand yet that this rule exists because Ostrovsky has already lost people to exactly the mistake you haven't made yet. Your customer base doubles inside of 2 months, less from effort than from the specific economics of being reliable in a market where reliability is rarer than product. You buy a safe small enough to hide in a dresser, and you start keeping actual cash instead of just tracking numbers on a screen, a physical stack that grows in a way that feels different from any number you've ever watched grow before. Heavier somehow, more real. You still think of this as temporary. Everyone at this level thinks of it as temporary. Level 3. The first serious money. You're 22 now, and Ostrowski's moved you off weed almost entirely, onto product with margins that make your old operation look like a lemonade stand, the way it always seems to at this stage of every version of this story. You're clearing more some weeks than your mother makes in 2 months at the hospital, where she's worked since before you were born. A fact that sits in your chest like something you're not allowed to say out loud in her house, so you don't. You get an apartment under a friend's name, paying rent in cash handed over quietly, first and last, and a little extra that makes the landlord stop asking the questions he was clearly about to ask. Talia comes into your life around now, a coworker from the job you technically still hold on to for appearances, and for months, you let her believe the money comes from somewhere ordinary. An inheritance, a side hustle flipping electronics, anything smaller than the truth. When you finally tell her, she goes quiet for a long time before she says she needs to think, and the 2 weeks she takes to think are the longest 2 weeks you've had since this started, longer even than the wait before your first real sale. Level 4. Real weight. Ostrowsky starts trusting you with volume that changes the legal category of what you're doing, even if it doesn't change how the actual work feels day to day. You understand, in an abstract way you don't examine too closely, that the amount in your trunk on a bad day now is enough to turn an arrest into the kind of sentence that reorganizes an entire life rather than interrupting it. You start doing things you'd have found paranoid a year earlier, switching phones every few months, taking a different route to the same drop point every single time, watching mirrors in a way that used to belong to people in movies about people like you. You tell yourself this is just competence. Some part of you, quieter and more honest, understands it's actually fear that's learned to dress itself up as competence because fear alone was too heavy to carry around all day without a better name for it. Level 5. The Rival. A guy named Priest who used to work adjacent territory without much friction starts moving in on customers you'd considered yours for over a year, and what happens next has nothing to do with police and everything to do with the specific, older kind of math that governs territory in this business. 2 of Priest's guys corner you outside a gas station on a Thursday, not with weapons drawn, just with a presence that makes clear the handoff you were there for was never actually the point of the conversation. Nobody touches you. Nobody has to. You don't breathe normally again until you're 4 blocks away with your hand shaking on a wheel that's never shaken like that before, not even the first time you did this. You call Ostrowski that night, and he listens for a long time before telling you something that reorders everything you thought you understood about your own place in this business. The territory was never yours. You were just the one working it, and the moment you started thinking of it as yours, you became exactly the kind of target Priest just showed you that you are. Level 6. The Run. Ostrowski asks you to personally drive product 4 states over, farther than you've ever carried anything, with no real explanation for why this specific run needs you instead of one of his usual people. You say yes before you fully thought it through, because at this point in the relationship, telling Ostrowski no feels like its own specific kind of danger, a quieter cousin of the one Priest represented. The drive takes 6 hours with traffic, your hands damp on a wheel that's carrying more weight in the trunk than you've ever personally moved, past 3 separate highway patrol cars, each one sending something electric through your chest, even though not one of them slows down. The buyer on the other end barely looks at you, treats the whole exchange like the most unremarkable transaction imaginable, which somehow makes it feel more dangerous rather than less. Ostrowski calls 2 days later to tell you the buyer asked specifically whether you'd be handling these runs going forward, and you understand with real clarity for the first time that you've stopped being someone who sells product and become someone who moves it, a distinction that sounds small and isn't, because the second category carries considerably more weight if anything ever actually goes wrong. Level 7. The Close Call. An ordinary Tuesday. A broken tail light you'd meant to fix for 2 weeks. An officer who's polite right up until he asks if he can search the car. You say no. You know you're allowed to say no. And you spend a full, stretched-out minute watching him decide whether your refusal alone is enough to justify calling in a dog. It isn't this time. He lets you go with a warning. And you drive 3 blocks before you have to pull over and sit there for 10 minutes, unable to make your hands work the wheel again. What you don't know yet, and won't know for months, is that the stop wasn't actually random, that Ostrowski's operation had already drawn quiet attention from a detective working a case that had nothing to do with you specifically, and everything to do with the network you're now a documented, if unnamed, part of. You don't feel safer after that night. You feel, for the first time, genuinely watched in a way that reframes every gas station, every red light, every glance held half a second too long by a stranger into something that might mean nothing or might mean everything, with no reliable way left to tell which. Level 8. The Betrayal. It doesn't start with police, it starts with Priest, picked up on an unrelated charge and deciding, faced with his own significant sentence, that information about Ostrowski's network is worth more to him now than whatever loyalty he ever actually felt. You don't find out it was Priest until much later. What you experience in the moment is just a sudden, specific tightening, Ostrowski going quiet, runs getting canceled without explanation, a coldness on the phone that wasn't there a month earlier. Talia notices it too, notices it enough that she's already started quietly moving her things out of the apartment before you fully registered what's happening. And by the time you ask her directly if everything's okay, the closet is half empty and she stopped meeting your eyes. "You knew what this was when I stayed," she says, the only time she actually answers the question straight. She's gone within the week, and you tell yourself it doesn't matter, that you never needed anyone else's presence to do this work, while some small, honest part of you knows exactly how untrue that is. Level 9. The Raid. It happens at 6 in the morning, the way it always seems to in every version of this story you've ever half-listened to, except now you're the one it's actually happening to. A task force hits 3 locations at once: your apartment, the tire shop, a distribution point you didn't even know was connected to the same operation until that exact morning. You're face down on your own kitchen floor before you're fully awake, and the specific disorientation of being pulled straight from sleep into handcuffs is somehow worse than anything you'd braced yourself for during months of low-grade background fear. The evidence, laid out in charging documents weeks later, is comprehensive in a way that makes your old color-coded spreadsheet look almost embarrassing in hindsight. Surveillance photos going back over a year, financial records tracing cash you'd assumed was untraceable, and priests' own cooperation providing the connective narrative tying every fragment into something a jury can actually follow. Level 10. What's left? The plea deal trades a considerably longer sentence for your own cooperation. Information about Ostrowski's network you're able to give precisely because you spend years being trusted with more of the operation's structure than someone at your level was ever technically supposed to see. You serve 5 years, a number that sounded almost survivable when a lawyer first said it out loud, and feels considerably heavier by year 2, once the actual texture of 5 years. Every holiday, every missed birthday, every ordinary Tuesday you'll never get to live as anything other than a number on a calendar stops being an abstraction discussed in a conference room and becomes the whole shape of your life. You're 27 when you walk out with a record that follows you into every job application and every apartment lease from now on. You think, more often than you'd expect, about the napkin math from level 1, the specific uncomplicated arithmetic of a half ounce and a few friends of friends, before any of it meant anything beyond a little extra cash and a feeling that turned out to be the first step of a longer staircase than you ever understood you were climbing. You take a job doing warehouse work, ordinary and slow in exactly the way your old life never was. And some nights the slowness still feels like a loss, even though you know, with the specific clarity 5 years bought you, that it's actually the only real gain you have left. If this one hit different, let me know what story you want turned into the next video.